Hello everyone. Today we are at the Arch at the University of Georgia, which is the most iconic symbol of the university. Drawing this arch can seem quite a challenge at first sight. What we will do today is approach it in a systematic way and break it down so that something that looks very complicated can become a very simple thing to draw. Looking at the arch, we see that it's made up of a few basic shapes. At the very top is a semicircle. Below that we have a long and narrow rectangle. And underneath that, the three columns are within a square. And then below that, what we have is a base or a pedestal for the columns, which is exactly 1/3 of their height. So with that basic geometry, we can start to lay out the framework of these shapes and then finalize them and fill them in with details. What I'm going to do is start with the square that the three columns make up. And I'm doing that because it is the largest component. We'll make sure that the overall proportions of the composition remain correct. So here is my square. On top of that, I'm going to add a long, narrow rectangle, which is the base of the curve at the top, maybe a little bit thicker. To add the base for the columns, I will measure the height of the columns that I drew into approximately 1/3 and add that down here. Draw a line through the center. I'm going to take this width till about here and find a point up here and find the corresponding point on the other side, and then draw a curve that links the three. This will take a few tries, and what you will have to do is turn your sketchbook around so that you can draw a curve smoothly and without too much trouble. And having gotten a shape that I think is pretty close to the arc is in real life, what I'm going to do is flatten it a little bit. So come down and then complete that. And the reason we're doing this is because the arch is not a full semicircle, but a little bit flatter. So having done that, what I'm now going to do is add a little bit of detail and structure to the columns. The columns have a capital, which I'm going to mark off like this. And then this right here at the base. And then I'm going to roughly mark off the bases for each of the columns. Having done that, and once I'm sure that the proportions match, then I can go ahead and hardline the guidelines that I drew, and then also start adding detail. So I'm going to start with the base of the arc here, which I've drawn a little bit too small because I need to make room for the lights. So I'm going to push that out just a little bit and go out on either side. And then I'm going to finish each column individually and then go on to the base. And what I want to do here is make sure that the columns are tapered, meaning they're a little bit narrower at the top than they are at the bottom. And to get that right, what I'm going to do is first draw two parallel lines and then widen them just a little bit at the base. So what we do is very gently provide a taper. And that is our first column. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and show some detail at the base. And because the detail is fairly small in size, it's quite simple to just suggest it by doing a little bit of line work without worrying too much about the specific aspects of it. In here, we can add as much detail as we want to, and a lot of it can be suggested just to communicate a little bit of the feel of the detail without actually investing a lot of time in it. And then here we will show a little bit of the ornamentation. Now what I'm going to do is hardline the arch and finish that. So the line that I drew, I'm going to draw a second parallel line following the outline closely so that we get a consistent width thickness. And then what we're going to do is the really beautiful ornamentation. First, I'm going to lay the forms out very lightly. so. And then we will just come and now I've done this kind of fairly quickly, but you can take as much time and add as much detail to it as you want. The more detail you add, the more beautiful the drawing gets. And then now I'm going to go and do the lights. So the lights sit at the very edge of the rectangle at the top, and so we will go ahead and do that. Finishing this drawing is simply a matter of mirroring it so that the whole drawing is complete. It's very important to pay attention to where the finished drawing is going to end up on the sheet. Well, what I realize now is I started a little bit too high, which means that I have a lot of white space at the bottom, and it would have been ideal if the sketch had been a little bit lower, but since this has happened, and this happens a lot in sketches because along the way you might want to add a little more details. And a very simple thing to do is, in the end, use that space to provide a title. And you can either put your signature there, or the date, or a title, which I'm going to do. And then by doing that, what we make sure is that the overall sheet looks very well composed. And now it looks like the title was intentional. The arch is going to be a very challenging object to draw. But what I would suggest is start simply and then add more detail as you feel more comfortable. Don't try to do everything in the beginning all at once. And the more you do, the more you try, the better it's going to get and easier it is going to get.